record. Listen, I got some cuts here and want to talk to you about this because there's so much disinformation what's going on, and you are the head honcho, the executive director of the Petroleum Marketers Association of the state of Mississippi. You just kind of clarify this. What do you think, if you have the top three, what's the top three bits of disinformation that are being put out there that you'd like to correct?
Number one, the fact that when the administration came on and said, hey, the retailers need to lower the prices of their product, and, I mean, they didn't single out any other industry. The big box stores who sell food, everybody's being affected by this. These are retailers, independent business people who are selling a product, providing a service for a profit. It's supply and demand. It's basic economics. That's number one. Number two, the fact that the current policies of green energy, what they're wanting to do is affecting everything in a negative way, I might add. And number three, the petroleum, the oil-producing companies, the major oil companies are doing everything they can to meet the demand. But one thing I would like to point out right quick, Paul, if you don't mind.
Sure.
In Mississippi, there's 2,498 convenience stores, employs about 40,000 people, does about 2.5 million transactions a day, and none of them are owned by a major oil company. When you see a convenience store in Mississippi, it's owned by independent business people. Only about 6% nationwide of the convenience stores are owned by major oil companies.
So, and I didn't realize it was it was that low as far as 6%. So a lot of these service station owners, the convenience store owners,
yes,
regardless of what the price of the gas is, if it's $5 a gallon or $2 a gallon, their net profit from there is basically the same, is it not?
Correct.
In other words, if we're selling gas under the Trump administration $2.15 and they're making 10 cents a gallon, if they sell it now under the Biden administration, it's $5.50. They're still going to make, 5 or 10 cents a gallon. I'm not sure how much it is, but is there an average?
Well, there's things out there that talks about the average. It varies from state to state. But the main thing you just hit on right there is that, they're making probably the same margins or profit today that they were a year ago on the sale of the fuel or 2 years ago under the Trump administration. But one thing that people don't realize that's happened is, 80% of all the fuel that's purchased in America is done with a credit card. And when you use a credit card, there's a thing called interchange fees.
That's true.
The interchange fees in Mississippi are about 2.5%. I think nationwide it's 2.2%. On July the 4th, AAA put this out, that day the average price of fuel was $4.88 a gallon, and it was the interchange fees were 10 cents per gallon. So every 10 gallons equals $1, okay? So that increased cost to the retailer is decreasing his or her profits. So it's a very complicated issue. And people, these retailers are members of your community. They're local independent business people. They put back into your community. And it's not, when you see a Chevron station, when you see an Exxon, Mobil, or a Valero, that's someone who's selling that branded fuel. That's the fuel you're buying is a branded fuel from that company. And then you see places that are unbranded, and that means they're just selling an unbranded fuel. It don't have a flagship name on it. And there's nothing wrong with unbranded fuel, but that's one thing is a misconception that when they see a Chevron station that's owned by Chevron, no, they've just got a contract to supply Chevron products.
Well, the other thing, too, is because, yesterday, as we were looking on the way to an appointment, it was like $3.88. We found some of the lowest gas prices, $3.88. And then there were still some people at like $4.50 or something like that. So how do they still make that decision to cut it to $3.88? Some people.
Well,
is that a difference between a name brand and an off brand, or is that the same gas that's delivered, but the additives are in one and not in another? Well,
when you talk about branded fuel, Paul, you're exactly right. Branded fuel has all the additives that the major oil companies have spent millions of dollars to develop. Unbranded fuel doesn't have as many additives or any additives in it that help your car's engine run cleaner and more efficiently. But when you look at the pricing you're talking about, you have to also think, you may have someone who bought a load of fuel at a higher price, and they hadn't sold all of it yet. When you
Bingo. That's such an important part. I want people to listen to this because that tanker may have delivered that, and they're down to the last quarter of that, and that fuel costs them more. And the reason I say that, Philip, is this. When you have the President of the United States of America say something like, gas overnight or oil overnight dropped 2% or something, and now you drive up to the station, and they haven't shown that he ought to know better than this.
Oh, I agree.
I mean,
it's basic economics. I mean, because it's no different than any other business. You sell if you bought something at a higher price, you sell all that, and then you change your price when you get in new product to supply. And another thing is how often is the fuel turnover in the tank, where the station is located, in terms of taxes, other things, the labor market there. So there's a lot of factors in there. But the main thing is just what you've hit on is they may have bought that fuel at a higher price, and they got to get rid of it.
Yeah. How much fuel does one tanker hold like that?
A transport, typically I think the max capacity on it's either 9,200, 9,400 gallons, but they don't haul that much because of the weight limits. It's usually, in the eights.
Yeah. I will say this, and I remember an interview we had, and this has been a long time ago, with a very, very experienced mechanic. And we were talking about this gasoline situation, and specifically Chevron was one I asked him about because I use that a lot. And he said if you break down an engine that's using the cheaper gas, just pure gas, compared to one that uses the additives that they put in there, Exxon, whatever it is, you'll see the difference in that engine. The ones that are using the additives, your engine is a heck of a lot better than the others. So it does a couple of extra cents.
Right.
In other words, and I've often said this, if you go to the low-cost one and it's only a couple of cents cheaper, across the street is a name brand with the additives, get the additives. It makes a lot of difference.
It makes a huge amount of difference. And I tell everybody, very few people do this. Read the instruction manual with your four-wheeler, with your boat, with your automobile, and you use the fuel that the manufacturer suggests you to use. If it says you can be okay with mid-grade, do that. If it's premium, use that. There's a reason they know their motor. There's a reason you should do that, And the one thing in Mississippi that people don't realize, Mississippians drive the highest number of vehicles per registered vehicle in the United States, right at 19,700 miles, and Mississippians consume per registered vehicle the highest amount of fuel nationwide at 1,170 gallons annually.
Didn't realize that. Wow.
Well, and I didn't either. So I got to looking at it. Well, we're a rural state. It makes sense.
Yeah. And it's killing us right now when some of these people who live 30 or 40 miles away have to drive in with the gas, a price of gas.
Absolutely.
It hurts.
Absolutely. People.
All right, we're almost got a break here, but on the way out here, I want to play a couple of things that the president has said that's added to all of this, but I think you cannot escape the fact that if somebody comes in and says, I am going to do this and this and this, I'm going to shut this down, and then they do it, you can't come back and say what we're saying is disinformation. He said he was going to do what he's done, and if there's any success in the Biden world at all, this unfortunately is possibly it. But, the guy said it.
How inflation has escalated over the past 18 months. Would you say that the war in Ukraine is the primary driver of inflation in America?
No, inflation was high certainly before the war in Ukraine broke out.
I understand inflation is a real challenge to American families. I'm doing everything within my power by executive orders to bring down the price and address the Putin price hike. Putin's war is already hurting American families at the gas pump. From Putin's price hike in gasoline. Putin invaded Ukraine. Help deal with this Putin price hike. I'm doing everything in my power to blunt Putin's gas price hike. Because the American people think the reason for inflation is government spending more money. Simply not true.
Would you say that the war in Ukraine is the primary driver of inflation in America?
No, inflation was high before the war in Ukraine broke out.
Putin's price hike is hitting America hard. 70% of the increase in prices in March came from Putin's price hike in gasoline.
Would you say that the war in Ukraine is the primary driver of inflation in America?
No, inflation was high before the war in Ukraine broke out.
We got more coming up. Housing lender, and we're talking with visiting Phillip Chamblee, and Phillip is the executive director of Mississippi Petroleum Marketers Association. When a service station or a convenience store makes these buys and they know the next one is going to cost more, I mean, it's up to them. If they want to go on and raise their price before that next tanker comes in, they can do that, can they not?
Absolutely. They're independent people, business people, and their pricing of what their product is, again, no different than any other business. If you know there's going to be an increase on blue jeans, well, you raise the price of your blue jeans. Yeah. If you're a clothing store.
Do we have several of the folks in the state of Mississippi that have like the larger number of, I guess it would be akin to a franchise, the largest number of service stations or convenience stores?
Our association, Paul, we have people who have one location. Some of my members are larger that may have 100 or more locations. Yeah. Based here in Mississippi, and multi-generational business people. I think a lot of them now into the third, sometimes fourth generation of ownership. And, so we have a cross-section of members and store sizes.
I would imagine there are probably some said, look, I'm making more money off the store itself than the problems we're having with the gas, so we could do this without that. They would just do the convenience store itself.
Absolutely. The majority of the profits of a convenience store is inside the store. When you look at it, when you go inside, they have, most anything you'd like to purchase, from food to other merchandise, whatever your needs may be. And it was really interesting during the 2020, a lot of people realized the value of a convenience store because they didn't want to go to a larger, like a big box store, because of the fear of COVID. Yeah. And they found out, hey, the local convenience store has a lot of things that I can just buy there, and so that was something that was interesting during the COVID situation back in 2020.
Let me throw this out, too. And again, Phillip Chamblee is my guest, Executive Director of the Petroleum Marketers Association. But kudos to you guys from Jeff Hewitt and the folks at the lottery, because they have given you guys high praise to all of the convenience store owners in the state of Mississippi who've undertaken, probably better than any other state, this lottery. And it has fueled a lot of, so to speak, new business at the convenience stores, and you guys have done a great job on that.
Well, thank you, Paul, and kudos to Jeff Hewitt, Tom Shahima, he was here.
Yes.
Everybody out there, they were wonderful to work with. They did an excellent job of starting the lottery up, rolling it out, training our retailers, and it's just a really good partnership. But it's a great group of folks out there. I can't say enough about them.
Talking about just disinformation, there's so much out there, and bald-faced lies. They look at us, they're in Washington, D.C., and they tell us one thing, and we know it's not true. There are hearings that were to address the federal government's refusing to auction off a large area of Cook Inlet. That's in the news today, and I'm sure a lot of people are keeping up with this. But when you have the bald-faced lies, let me simplify it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on here. But what the administration says, and Deb Haaland, I think she's part, or maybe full-blooded, I'm not sure, Native American, and she is the Interior Secretary of the Interior. And here she is being questioned about Cook Inlet. Now, let me say this on Cook Inlet so you'll understand when you hear this, for most people. It's when you have an auction for this, for all of this land, and this might be indigenous of most auctions out there, but it is specific to the oil industry, is my understanding. People keep their cards close to their vest or their chest.
Correct.
They don't tell you if they're going to participate. They're not saying anything. It's been like that forever. Nobody's putting their cards and showing their cards. So the Biden administration, and they knew this. They've got people out there who knows this. So what they basically said, we're canceling this because before the auction, there was nobody out there clamoring to be a part of the auction. Well, they never are. So that's how they did it. So if you understand that concept and the excuse he had, here is the Secretary of the Interior.
The folks that are coming to me are saying, we absolutely are interested, we're interested. Now there's no opportunity because it's been taken off the table.
Thank you, Ranking Member. It was the fact that actual oil companies did not show interest in Cook Inlet. I recognize that the Oil and Gas Association did show interest, but for for us to move that forward, we would have had to have interest from the actual companies who would be bidding on the leases. And
if there has been nothing that has laid down, they can't indicate what their interest is. It's kind of a horse before the cart. But what happened was there was no ability, no opportunity to even show an interest because the sale was entirely canceled.
Well, I appreciate your perspective on this, and I'm not sure what to say other than what I have already said.
Your response, Phillip. Yeah. Oh, man.
I'm sort of speechless on that. 25% of the nation's crude oil volumes come from federal lands and federally protected waters. And to say that because it's a bidding process, like anything, you play the card as close to your chest and then you go out there and bid. Again, that's economics, supply and demand. It's amazing. It's almost been 2 years since a lease has been sold in the Gulf, if I understand it correctly. I mean, that's amazing that we've almost went 2 years without any new leases in the Gulf.
And was it a couple of weeks ago when things just really got worse and worse and worse? He made an announcement: we're taking more land, ocean off.
Correct.
As far as the Gulf of Mexico. So Steve Scalise, as you well know from Louisiana, he knows what's going on, but he was part of that hearing.
The number one concern you hear people talk about in every district I go to, not just in southeast Louisiana where I represent, is that gas prices are too high, and they know that they shouldn't be too high. And they're too high because Joe Biden, as a candidate, said that he was going to end drilling in America, end it offshore, end it onshore, and he went after oil and gas companies in America. He also, at the same time, started begging other countries to produce our energy for us. It started with Russia. Before the invasion of Ukraine, we were getting more of our oil from Russia under Joe Biden, and in fact, Putin was making about $700 million a day selling his oil to America in Europe in the buildup to the Ukraine war. Wow. And so because Joe Biden shut down production in America, there's a cost to that. And so there's no reason Putin should have been making all of that money. Then he turned to Iran. He's turned to Venezuela. He's going to be meeting with the Saudi princes, begging them to produce more oil when we can produce it here. Everybody knows that. And the real important point is no one does it better. No one does it cleaner, lower carbon footprint.
That's
if oil's made anywhere in the world, the best place to make it and produce it is in America.
Yeah, and one of the best ways is pipelines, too, by the way, but that's another story. When the President of the United States of America has this in front of the podium and says, I'm doing everything I can to lower gas prices, can you tell me one thing that he's done in even the last month that actually lowers
Paul,
gas prices?
I actually cannot tell you anything. Nothing comes to mind. I mean, because you're exactly right. No. That was his platform, and he is doing exactly what he said he was going to do. And Scalise was right. Who's going to do it cleaner, safer, and better than America is? Just a few short years ago, we were energy independent, and now we're releasing oil from the Strategic Oil Reserve. We're trying to get oil from other countries, and it's just baffling to me. I can't figure it out. And
I think, this guy's name, because when you start looking at it, I didn't realize that $700 million a day is what Putin was making on selling oil to us and Europe. What we did, we had a guy who came and shut us down and ingratiated more riches on Russia, and now we're sending money to Ukraine to fight Russia. Come on.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's very crazy. Again, when you look at Mississippi, the number of people that work in the oil fields offshore. I have a nephew that works offshore. My hometown is Carthage, Mississippi. We have a lot of people who work on land rigs and offshore. One of my brothers is somewhere between Australia and here right now. He works in the oil fields in Australia. No. And the reason he doesn't work in the oil fields in the Gulf is, the opportunity is not there like it used to be with the number of leases, so he works overseas.
The frustrating thing is that with a private sector guy or anybody who's really a public servant and loves this country could turn this thing around fast.
Absolutely.
All you got to do is, we know we got the blueprint from the last administration.
Absolutely.
And you got to come back in. We'll chew the fat again a little bit later on. We appreciate you so very much.
Thank you, Paul.